talk to your chair of your math or science department in your high school, ask them what they are doing to compensate for the standards that may not be there, that should be there. In the old Massachusetts document, we had a full set of pre-calculus standards, full set of Algebra 2 standards, and a full set of pre-calculus standards. Didn't mean that they were required for graduation. It simply was a signal that this is where your math curriculum should go in a high school today. Even when I went to high school, there was always a full trig course for those students who wanted to go to an engineering school, because it was always an expectation. So there are some issues that have to be looked at and worked out. You can add, as people have said, you can add what you want to your curriculum. One problem is that it won't be tested by Common Core, because only what is in Common Core will be tested, and you'll see that on the PARCC tests, PARCC. And there's no incentive for a school to teach something that isn't going to be offered, that isn't going to be tested. You can offer it, but there's no incentive for a teacher to offer something that will not be tested, and eventually that they may be evaluated on the basis of. They can't be evaluated on the basis of something they've added that isn't in Common Core standards. So there are a number of interrelated issues to look at. I am going to finish, I'm not sure, I've got 2 minutes, you're telling me, okay. As I've said, one of the strategies that parents can use if they are concerned with what is in their child's curriculum, and they have a sense that this is less than, or for some reason, in a peculiar way, different from whatever their the children's older siblings may have had, they can opt a child out of the test. The other thing, which I've discovered is now taking place in about 5 or 6 communities, one as close as Halifax, is a non-binding question on the ballot that allows people who are registered to vote in a community to vote whether they like the Common Core standards or would like the legislature to do something about it. There is a question that the selectmen in Halifax, I was told this past week, just allowed to go on the ballot for their May election. And last night when I spoke in Whitman, I was told there were about 4 or 5 other communities in the area, Tewksbury is one which is not in the area, that have already voted on some non-binding question. Why is this important? First of all, it's a freedom of speech issue. It allows public opinion to be voiced. Doesn't have to be binding. It is asking the state legislature to do something. At least they should be aware of it. State legislatures were, by the way, totally bypassed when Common Core was developed and approved by your state board. They had no idea. This is why I've been testifying in about half the states in this country. State legislatures want to know what is Common Core. They're now being asked to pay the bills for the technology for it, and they do not understand what it is they're paying the bills for because they were bypassed, and it was deliberate. The original memo was signed by a governor, chair of a state board, and a commissioner of ed. That was deliberate. That would make it legal for the state board to adopt Common Core standards, and then once the standards are adopted, they become the legal basis for a state test, which the state board has the authority to impose on an entire state. So you've got ballot questions, and then there is what I call good old civil disobedience. Remember that grade 11 essay that was always taught in the English class, still is around. It's strictly New England, strictly Massachusetts, Thor's essay on civil disobedience. Yes, one can begin to ask for review. This is a state legislature issue. What I would like to leave for those of you who are on state school committees is my reiteration of the fact that you are legally elected by the voters to be in charge of all aspects of your school, local school system. The philosophy, the curriculum, instructional methods. That authority is still there, hasn't been taken away. The next layer are state legislators who are also elected by voters. State board was not elected by voters. They are appointed by a governor. This is hugely important. From my understanding, I grew up in an open town meeting, and I've been a town meeting member in Brookline where I've lived for many years. But those people who are elected by the voters have the statutory authority to do something. And they've got to hear from you if you have concerns. And I know that the next speaker is going to be able to give you even more concerns. We'll talk a little bit, I think, about data mining, a little bit on that. Okay, so this is all I'm going to say right now because there's more information coming.
In case I didn't notice, have any state legislators come into the room since we opened up the session this evening? I might have missed someone. Yeah. It appears the answer is no.
Yes.
I would ask you to all keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Every one of us has a cell phone. Call your state legislator. That's one of the things you can do. So, without being a rabble-rouser any further in this segment, let me introduce our next speaker. Allegro, a rabble-rouser? No. For our final speaker, we have Dr. Peg Luksik, who's a Pennsylvania teacher with over 35 years of experience at every level, from K through 12 and beyond, into college. She's trained teachers in curriculum and classroom management. She's written and evaluated curricula. She's authored a number of books on education issues. She's hosted a nationally syndicated television program dealing with education in America. Dr. Luksik served as an advisor to President Reagan's Commission on the Family and worked for the U.S. Department of Education. I said it last time and I'll say it again. Please don't hold that against her. And so she's worked at the U.S. Department of Education where her task was to review and evaluate education reform initiatives. And a warm welcome, please, for Dr. Peg Luksik.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming tonight. I'm going to do the commercial portion of the program first. I'm about to feed you through a fire hose. And what happens is you will understand it while I'm talking, and then you'll go home and think, what did she say? I don't really remember. So I have two videos in the back. They're computer CDs. The first one is called Invalid and Unreliable, and this actually analyzes the testing of Common Core. You're a member of PARCC, and so we talk about why and how the tests don't work. When I was in grad school, I actually was the grad assistant that ran the psychometric testing clinic in the university that I attended, so I administered tests like this, scored them, and then used them to diagnose and place children for IEPs. And these tests do not meet the standards of valid and reliable, no matter how you define it. So what I do is use the research and walk you through it. That's invalid and unreliable. The second one is called Should Our Children Be Standardized? What happens in a real classroom to real children when you attempt to mandate that every child learn the same thing to the same level on the same day in the same way? What does that do to a classroom? Should Our Children Be Standardized also includes information on the new Advanced Placement U.S. History Standards. That's the College Board has revised the U.S. History course for our college seniors. It now teaches the founding of this country without mentioning people like John Adams or Thomas Jefferson. And it teaches World War II without mentioning Dwight Eisenhower, D-Day, Adolf Hitler, or the Holocaust. So if you want to know what's happening in the new United States History Standards, that's for you. They're in the back. We do ask for a donation because what I do is I circle the money around because I have to pay to make them. They all include original documents, so you don't see me, you hear my voice, but you see original, whether it's research or government documents. I'm going to talk to you tonight about a couple of issues. I want to just touch on, as Sandra said, the data mining, and perhaps you've seen the research or the news reports that right here in Massachusetts in the town of Tewksbury, was a committee of the school board, and they were talking about the cost of placing children out of district. and somehow the committee packet that included information on the children wound up getting published, and the local paper found it, and they didn't publish the names, but the paper said they could identify some of the children. Because even though their names weren't there, the school they went to, their age, all of that personal information was available. One of the mothers has actually been on Fox News. So they are collecting over 400 data points. Of greater concern, which also surfaced, was that the school was rating the parents on how cooperative they were, and giving the parents a grade of 1, 2, or 3, with 1 being very cooperative and 3 being uncooperative. So parents who fought for out-of-district placement for their special needs child found themselves rated 3, uncooperative. Now, if you don't think it's a problem that the schools are rating not just your children, but you as parents on how cooperative you are, then that shouldn't be of concern. But if you do think it's a problem, you should be paying quite a bit of attention to what kind of data is being collected and what they're doing with it. I want to back up. We've heard a lot of information on the history and some of the structure of the standards, but let's look at the pedagogy underneath. Because you know, these are classrooms, and they are children. So what happens to children in classrooms? This is not, we're writing standards guidelines. This is basically what we want the teachers to be teaching in 3rd grade or 4th grade or 5th grade or 10th grade or 12th grade or in English or math or science. This is saying every child, they're called achievement standards. The government is mandating what your children will learn and when they will learn it. This isn't universal access to education. This is universal proficiency. Well, can we mandate that everybody learn the same thing at the same time? Well, let's move it to healthcare. A healthcare achievement standard. You all have to have the same blood pressure. Can the government mandate that? Well, they could try. Is that going to make it true? No, it's not. It's not going to make it true. So what happened? Well, the government told the states, you have to have achievement standards and every child has to be proficient, but you can define proficient wherever you want. This is what happened. Stand up. Just lay up there, exercise is good for you. Okay, this is vocal performance. When you can meet the standard, you can sit down, but you cannot sit down until you meet the standard. Are you ready? Pavarotti. Anybody who can sing like Luciano Pavarotti, considered one of the greatest tenors of the 20th century, can sit down. So, congratulations. Soloist with the New York Met. Chorus member with the New York Met. Soloist with the Regional Symphony. Chorus member with the Regional Symphony. Soloist with the church choir. This is a very unmusical group. Sings in the church choir. Sings in the shower and enjoys it. Can't carry a tune in a bucket. Can't find the bucket. I am a teacher in a classroom. My evaluation and my continued employment, therefore, is dependent upon every child reaching the standard. And the states are being told that every child has to reach the standard as part of their ESEA waiver and all their federal requirements. But you can set the standard wherever you want. Where are you going to put it? Well, it sings in the shower and enjoys it, because that's where you all sat down. What about the child for whom the standard should have been Pavarotti? See, that child walked into the classroom on the very first day already able to sing in the shower and enjoy it. So that child will pass the test. The teacher gets no reward whatsoever for any child taking one step beyond the minimum standard. So the teacher looks at Mr. Pavarotti to be and says, you can sing in the shower and enjoys it. I'm ignoring you. Because you can already pass the test. And we don't even measure beyond that minimum standard. Did education succeed for that child? Or did it fail? It failed. But it's a silent failure, because that child will never be identified and will never be found and will have passed the test. And in fact, that's what the research says. The University of Connecticut did a study and said, in this system, gifted children are so frustrated because there's a ceiling on what's presented to them, because the classroom moves at the speed of the bottom. I'm the teacher. Where am I going to spend all my time in my little